Cora, and welcome back to Crimes Across Borders. With the recent updates in the Madeleine McCann case, I was thinking a lot about it, and it reminded me about another case that happened in Poland back in 2011. It's a case that at first looked shockingly similar, and just as the story unraveled, it got worse and worse. And what's really disturbing is that one of the theories people still float in Madeleine's case, it's exactly what actually happened here. This is the story of Katarzyna Waśniewska, a Polish mother who claimed her baby daughter was kidnapped, sparking a massive national search, only for the horrifying truth to come out later. Let me just say, this one is not easy. As awful as any murder is when it involves a baby, it just hits completely differently. And the twists and turns in this case will leave you stunned, outraged, and probably really angry too. So normally this is the part where I would tell you about the victim, who they were, what they loved, how they lived. But in this case, the victim was just a little baby. Madzia was born on July 15th, 2011. She came into the world early, and right from the start, she had to fight. Her family wasn't even sure if she would survive. She spent the first 2 weeks of her life in the hospital, battling just to stay alive. But she pulled through, and at just 6 months old, she was still figuring out the world, probably loved being cuddled, feeding, crying for no reason, and all the little things that babies do. She never actually got the chance to grow into her personality and to discover herself, discover the world. And that's what makes this case so hard, because she was completely innocent. There's no backstory here. She was completely dependent on the people around her, and one of those people betrayed her in the worst possible way. To really understand how this case unfolded, we have to go back to Katarzyna's early life. And it's not exactly a pretty picture. She was born in 1990, which made her just 21 years old when her daughter died. She grew up in a dysfunctional family where life at home was difficult, to say the least. Her father struggled with alcohol addiction, and there were reports of different forms of abuse in the household. Her mother's way of coping was religion, and it was to the point where she became almost obsessive. She would spend long hours at the church, sometimes just disappearing there for a day, leaving Katarzyna to really just fend for herself. At school, Katarzyna didn't stand out too much. She was quiet, kept to herself, and didn't really have a big group of friends. She wasn't unintelligent. Her grades were fine, but she also didn't really try to excel in anything. She was the kind of student who did just enough to get by and leave. Eventually, she too got drawn into religion, following in her mother's footsteps, but here's where it gets a little strange. They weren't just a part of a typical Catholic parish, which is dominant religion in Poland, but something that resembled a fringe group or like borderline sect. There's barely any info about it beyond its connection to this case. But just to give you an idea, Katarzyna's friend reportedly got pregnant by one of the priests. So yeah, not your average Sunday Mass. So from what I gathered, she also met her future partner, her boyfriend, in a religious setting. I'm not sure if it was exactly in this religious group or just generally in the church, but they met around this time. And soon after dating for a while, it turned out that Katarzyna is pregnant. From everything we know, Katarzyna wasn't happy about it. She didn't want to be pregnant. And it seems like her boyfriend, Bartek, wasn't particularly excited either. But because of the religious expectations and to make sure that the baby wouldn't be born, out of wedlock, they rushed into marriage. So as I said, Katarzyna was not really happy about it at all. She continued smoking during the pregnancy, and after the baby was born, she seemed more focused on maintaining her appearance and going out than on bonding with her daughter. other people, especially her in-laws, were the ones doing the actual parenting. She would write in her diary that Bartek is not interested in her anymore. He only cares about work and the new baby. While pregnant, she wrote that she's scared of the changes that baby will bring and that she hates the cyborg growing inside of her. Now, looking back, some people wondered whether Katarzyna might have been suffering from postpartum depression. And honestly, based on the signs at the time, it would have been a reasonable question. But here's the thing, it was not postpartum. That was later ruled out by multiple specialists, and it was even backed up by some physical evidence. So this wasn't a case of someone mentally unwell and slipping through the cracks. This was something else entirely. In her first statement to the police, Katarzyna said she didn't remember much. It was January 24th, 2012, freezing winter day in Sosnowiec, Poland. She explained that she had been walking with Madzia to visit her mother, where the baby was supposed to stay for the night. The plan was to leave Madzia with her mom, so Katarzyna could prepare for a job interview the next day, something she apparently wanted to focus on without the distraction. So completely understandable, completely normal. She also made a point of saying that this time she was walking without her husband. Bartek had apparently helped her carry the stroller downstairs, and then he left with a friend to run some errands. Now, when police started pressing her, asking if she noticed anyone suspicious following her that evening, that's when the story of the man in a light jacket came out. She suddenly remembered seeing someone behind her, a guy in a beige coat with a dark belt. Katarzyna claimed he hit her in the head, knocking her unconscious, and when she woke up, the stroller was empty. Madzia was gone. There were no signs of struggle. Her purse was still there. The stroller as well, just no baby. She ran into a nearby home or possibly a shop, the reports differ, and told the people inside that her daughter had been kidnapped. From there, the police were called, and within hours, this story just exploded. A composite sketch was created and released to the media. Police actually said that her testimony was logical, consistent, and detailed. They definitely believed her. They did everything they could. Search teams were deployed, volunteers, TV crews showed up, journalists were live on the scene. A baby girl allegedly abducted in broad daylight in a city in Poland. It was huge. Everyone was doing whatever they can to help. And in a lot of cases like this, you hear the complaints that the police didn't do enough early on, that things were missed or brushed off. That was not the case here. They pulled every single available resource. Very quickly, they even found the man she described on CCTV. He really was there, walking in the area at the time, and they cleared him also very quickly. It turned out he had an ironclad alibi, so the focus kind of had to change at this point because what she described wasn't the case. And then Katarzyna started giving interviews, a lot of them, mostly alongside her husband, Bartek, who spoke really calmly, clearly, and, he pleaded for their daughter's safe return. And honestly, people didn't like that. They didn't like him at all. From the very beginning, people were saying that he was too calm, like he didn't care enough. He got so much backlash almost immediately. But looking back at the old footage now, I think he was just, really trying to keep it together. Katarzyna, on the other hand, looked completely broken. Puffy face, red eyes, this absent gaze. She mostly just clung to her husband's arm, barely speaking, just a few soft words when really prompted. And to me, at first, she looked like someone so consummated by grief. She couldn't even function anymore. And yeah, at first, most people believed her. It reminded a lot of people of the Madeleine McCann case, that same sense of chaos, confusion, and panic. A young mother suddenly thrust into the spotlight, the media watching her every move. But after those early hours, a lot of people started noticing some things, and for a lot of them, something just didn't sit right. I actually kind of remember this case unfolding in real life. I would have been around 18, 19 at the time. I wasn't living in Poland then, so I wasn't fully plugged into the news cycle or the local coverage. But even from a distance, I remember people analyzing everything. Every interview, every post, every facial expression, all of it. And people said she seemed emotionally flat, like she didn't care that much. She would often talk about the situation without even using Madzia's name, just baby this, baby that. And when her husband was making public pleas for their baby's safe return, her face would twist into these awkward, almost disconnected expressions. So just a few days after the supposed kidnapping, a familiar face showed up. Krzysztof Rutkowski, a former cop and private detective. Though I think I mentioned it already in another video, he doesn't have a license, although he has a lot of charisma. And I think this might be one of those few cases where he actually helped. He threw himself into the case, holding press conferences, offering huge cash rewards. He was constantly around the family, pressuring, prodding, observing. At one point, Rutkowski even convinced Katarzyna's mother-in-law to secretly record a conversation with her, hoping she might slip up or say something incriminating. Nothing truly damning came out of that, but still, her behavior was starting to raise serious red flags. She was distant, cagey, just off. And then Rutkowski suggested something else, a polygraph test for both Katarzyna and her husband Bartek. And Bartek agreed. He took the test and he passed without any issues. But Katarzyna, she refused, saying she was too tired to go through with it. And yeah, so that didn't exactly help her case. And by then, even the people that stood by her started to feel more and more uneasy about her behavior. So one day, finally, Rutkowski convinced Katarzyna to talk. And for the first time, she gave completely different version of events. No more stranger in a beige jacket, no more abduction. In a video he secretly recorded, she said she'd been getting ready to take Madzia out for a walk. The baby was wrapped in a tight, slippery blanket, and when she picked her up, she just slept. According to Katarzyna, Madzia fell out of her arms and hit her head on the threshold of the doorway. Not a flat floor, but one of those raised wooden ridges you sometimes get between the rooms. Something like this. So the whole confession, Rutkowski got it all on camera. There was no going back from that. This was a plot twist that left the entire country stunned. People were outraged. All that time, the energy, all the hope from the police, volunteers, the complete strangers. And it turns out that Katarzyna had known the truth all along. Her baby was already gone. And at this point, no one really believed it was an accident. And even if it kind of had started that way, the decision to hide the body and lie to the entire country, that just crossed a line for everybody. Aside from her husband, who stuck by her longer than most people expected, Katarzyna was completely alone. Public support vanished overnight, and the authorities, they weren't buying her version either. They continued their investigation with the new information, new facts. It took several more days to get Katarzyna to reveal where she had hidden Madzia's body. And again, it was Rutkowski who got her to talk. She confessed that she had hidden Madzia in a nearby park in some kind of abandoned ruin. When the police searched the area, they found more than just the baby's body. They discovered a cigarette butt with Katarzyna's DNA on it, and a pair of work gloves. Fibers from those gloves matched the fibers found on Madzia's body. So she used them when she was hiding her baby. And then a preliminary autopsy confirmed that Madzia had suffered a head injury that could have caused her death. But the timeline and the way it all unfolded still raised a lot of red flags. And authorities weren't convinced that this is the end of the story, so the investigation stayed open. So, of course, Katarzyna was arrested, but only for about 2 weeks. She was released after pretending to attempt a suicide, which made it difficult for them to keep her in the custody. And at that point, they just decided to release her. And what followed over the next few months, honestly, it was a total circus. So Katarzyna was meant to report for check-ins during the investigation, but after a while, she just stopped showing up. Before that, in that time, she gave few bizarre interviews. A book came out where she blamed everything on her husband's family. He eventually also stopped defending her publicly at this point. I remember one of the most infamous moments when she appeared on the front page of a gossip magazine. She was posing in this tiny black bikini, sitting on a horse, with the headline saying, "Now I have more time for my passions." Yeah, this actually happened. The public was furious, as you can imagine. And then the media started leaking private info from the investigation, including internet search history and personal diary entries from Katarzyna's diary. She had written about hating her baby. She researched different ways to harm or kill a child. And at this point, no one believed the death had been an accident. Not even close. And in the meantime, her behavior only got more and more erratic. She was spotted hiding in a flat with 2 random men, one of them pretending to be her husband and the other her father. And a fun fact, those men were later convicted for helping her avoid the authorities. There were also reports of her dancing at a strip club, showing up in random towns and changing her appearance. She was arrested at least twice, but for some reason released both times. She also spent time in a psychiatric institution, and then she just eventually disappeared. No one knew where she is, if she's even alive. Her own mother started to think that she may have taken her own life. There was an international warrant for her arrest. And then she was finally found alive and well. She was just trying to avoid arrest. By the time Katarzyna was finally arrested in November 2012, the case against her had become massive. The prosecution filed an 80-page indictment, and it wasn't just about hiding a body or lying to the police anymore. She was officially being charged with murder, filing a false kidnapping report, and creating false evidence to throw off the investigation. So it was pretty serious. The trial opened in February 2013, and it was, again, huge. Over 70 media outlets were covering it. People across the country were watching. All the eyes were on this case. There were no eyewitnesses to the murder itself, so the prosecution had to build their case from forensic evidence, expert opinions, and the accounts of over 40 witnesses in general. These included people from Katarzyna's school years, former friends, family members, and others who had seen how she acted both before and after Madzia's death. But the most important testimony came from the psychiatrists and psychologists. They said Katarzyna showed signs of pathological lying, distorted view of reality, and even psychopathic traits. She couldn't take the responsibility for anything. She saw herself as a victim. She fantasized, she twisted facts, and she would shape her image to manipulate others, even retelling events from books and films as if they were her own memories. In fact, the investigators believed she may have been inspired by the film called Freedomland, a movie about a mother who fakes a kidnapping after killing her own child. And there's quite a lot of similarities, which was quite disturbing. And then, of course, there was the physical evidence, the reason why the investigation was actually kept open. The final autopsy report concluded that Madzia had been suffocated. Not dropped, as her mother said, not accidentally injured, but suffocated. There were also marks on her clothing that showed she had been undressed before the fatal injury, which completely contradicted Katarzyna's claim that she slipped and dropped her baby while she was wrapped in this slippery blanket. Investigators recovered diary entries and search history from her computer that showed exactly what she's been thinking in the weeks leading up to the murder. And it was quite chilling. She had searched for things like cremation for infants, suffocation due to the smoke from the chimney, funeral benefits for a baby, how to accidentally kill a child, gas poisoning, and unintentional manslaughter sentencing in Poland. She even looked up the prices of a child-sized coffin. So definitely somewhat premeditated. In her personal notes, she described her pregnancy as a mistake. On her wedding day, which happened only 4 months after meeting Bartek, she wrote down 22 reasons not to have a child. And this quote honestly makes my stomach turn. I see this child as an enemy, a threat, a draining little cyborg. According to investigators, she started preparing to kill her baby girl on January 17th, a week before the staged kidnapping. On that day, she searched for info about gas leaks and carbon monoxide poisoning. They believe she attempted to actually kill Madzia once already, but was interrupted when her husband came home unexpectedly. In the end, the court didn't buy any of her excuses. The district court in Katowice sentenced Katarzyna to 25 years in prison. She was also ordered to cover the costs of the trial, which totaled over 100,000 złotych, so roughly just $25,000. During her appeal, she broke down in tears. She claimed that Madzia still came to her in dreams, that she missed feeling of her tiny little hands, and begged the court to assign a new team of experts to help her prove her innocence. And you know what? The court actually agreed to bring in more specialists. But in the end, they upheld the sentence. In fact, they actually tightened it. In the final ruling, the court stated that Katarzyna would only be eligible for early release after serving 20 full years, meaning she won't be able to apply for parole until 2032. She later tried to appeal to the Supreme Court, but was rejected in 2014. And legally, that was the end. But socially, publicly, the case never really faded. Every year on the anniversary of Madzia's death, Polish media outlets revisit this story. People still ask, where is Katarzyna now? What does she look like? Is she working? What's her life like in prison? And she hasn't given a single interview since 2012. Unofficially, it is known that she changed her name, refused all press requests, and banned the prison from giving out any information about her personal life behind bars. And as far as the public's concerned, Katarzyna Waśniewska no longer exists. But the world hasn't forgotten her, and it definitely hasn't forgiven her. This case is honestly one of the most disturbing I've ever covered, not just because of what happened, but because of the layers of lies, the media circus, and the fact that so many people fought to find a baby who had already been gone the whole time. And the person responsible for all of this, all that heartbreak, was the mother. If you watched this far, thank you for sticking with me. Cases involving children are never easy, and I know this one was especially hard. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the sentence was enough? And what do you think of the public's obsession with her, even all these years later? If you found this case informative or you want to see more like it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. It really helps the channel grow and reach more people who care about these stories. This has been Crimes Across Borders, and I'm Cora, and I will see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Bye.